Next up, we have Andrew Auld and Jonathan Field from Open Fifth. They need no introduction, but Andrew is the commercial director and Jonathan is the managing director at Open Fifth. Given we're here to celebrate the 25th birthday of Koha, it's also timely to talk about building for the next 25 years and beyond. And that is what Jonathan and Andrew are going to talk about. Thinking about further innovations and developments to Koha as we prepare for the future. I talked too fast. Yeah, technology continues to be my downfall. I'm not doing that. No, it's far too early for karaoke. Okay, we've got a computer. Claps, everyone.
Computer, but it's not showing yet.
It looks like it's extending, so maybe if we drag.
Yeah. Okay, hang on.
It's really dark.
Oh, it's got
privacy
a
screen.
privacy screen, yeah.
Yeah, I see. I'm really good at technology, guys.
Oh, well, I'm just proving that I'm not. Mirror. Here,
Yeah.
I want to go here. Mirror. Yay.
Cool, okay. Yay!
So first, just to thank the organisers of Kohacon and Chris particularly for allowing us to talk today, and also for everyone here in Aotearoa for their amazing welcome, and also we've explored the South Island for a week and have really loved that experience. Just to introduce my ancestors, I'm from Scotland through my father, who's an Auld, and his parents, an Auld and a Macquarie. And I just thought it was interesting to point out that Macquarie is a sept of the MacGregor clan. And Rob Roy MacGregor, you may have heard of, who was one of the Jacobite rebellion folk who were fighting against the encroachment of the English into Scotland. So I like that heritage, particularly here. And on my mother's side, Kay and Hope are family names, and they're from West Yorkshire in England, and I love the name Hope in my ancestry. I am from Cumbria, is where I was born and brought up, and the mountains of Cumbria are my favourite part of the country, in particular Blencathra, which is a beautiful mountain should you ever visit. And I now live in Derbyshire, in the centre of England, and there we have wonderful mountains and rivers to explore also. And I'm Andrew Auld, and I'm Commercial Director at Open Fifth, and I have brought my favourite little toy of ours as well, just to show you that what happens when you put a display through the wash too hot. It comes out as a mini display. So, and also to say that we have lots of stickers with us and pens, so should you want that kind of thing, then please help yourselves. Jonathan.
Yes, and I'm Jonathan Field, one of the two founders of Open Fifth, the artist formerly known as PTFS Europe. So my father and grandfather were from London. My grandfather was one of the surviving brothers in the Great War. And my father was actually born within the sound of Bow Church, which means he was born within the sound of Bow Bells, which means he was a Cockney. So if you hear me using any Cockney phrases, plates of meat, apples and pears, and I expect some of you got Brahms and Liszt last night. My mother is from the northeast of England, Hartlepool, which famously hung monkeys back in the day. And the soccer club is nicknamed the Monkey Hangers. And my parents, my mother moved to London actually as a young girl, and my parents met at the School of Pharmacy at St Bart's Hospital, who are now one of our Koha customers. which is great. And that's how it came about.
Before we get on to our presentation, our biggest news as an organisation happened this year. Our biggest news for some time. We have lots of big news all the time, but this was big. And, you may know, and it's been referred to, that we were previously known as PTFS Europe, but we're not anymore, in case you'd missed it. This happened in March of 2025, and we're absolutely delighted with the way that our name change has gone down. But it might be, as we haven't done this presentation or spoken about this to this community, we thought we would just give a tiny snippet of where this name came from. And it's actually to do with mine and Jonathan's relationship, which goes back 28 years. I only joined PTFS Europe in 2019, but Jonathan and I have known each other for a long, long time, and we met singing in a choir, and Jonathan was a bass and I was a tenor, and we often sang an open fifth apart. And so that's an interval in music. We're both lovers and practitioners of music. And if you carefully study the logo, there's actually a crotchet hidden in the O and the P of the logo. And that is also a nod. We worked with some great designers on the rebranding. We're very, very pleased with how it's gone. And just because we're a team of people at Open Fifth and we work very strongly as a team, this is our team, this is our family at Open Fifth. Bar one. Unfortunately, Rachel wasn't present for that photo last year. So, on to our presentation. Now, as with all good presentations, it's always good to recycle old material. And I actually did a presentation which was focused around the QA processes in Koha back in 2022, and trying to strengthen our efforts as a community to work with QA and fund it better. But some of the slides that I put up at that time, I think, are relevant to this talk today. And we talked about the life cycle of an open source project and where Koha sits perhaps on that life cycle. And I guess kind of firmly in the core stage, which is a great stage to be because it's got a broad audience, it does loads of great stuff, it delivers loads of value, and there's a lot of focus on maintenance and keeping the pace steady and steady helm on the ship. So that's a great place to be. Sadly, on this diagram, there's another stage, which is the archived stage, and we don't want to go there. So it's about what do we do to keep in that lovely core, Koha core, actually. And I think we probably answered for ourselves the question about whether Koha is a core product and a project, and I think it is, strongly. One could see that, and there's going to be a few tree analogies going through this, as being in the autumn of your years. And the connotations of that, although beautiful and red and russety, are the only way is towards the end time, and we don't want that to happen. So there are indicators of what a core project looks like. Some of these we kind of agree with around Koha, but some not. So slow in development, really, I don't think so. Not from my standpoint, and certainly not from the rest of the presentation standpoint. QA processes, yeah. Neglected bugs, there are one or two, or three or four. We're good with security, I think. We have a great security team, so that's something we guard against actively. And I don't see any sign of adoption slowing, certainly not in the markets we operate in, and we've heard some great presentations this week already to speak against that. I think the last one needs some thought, and that's where we're going to be pushing some thought today, because new technologies have got the potential to supplant what we currently do and how we do it. Just by the way, that was 2022, photographed by me in Denver, Colorado, or in the Colorado Rockies, and the trees, lovely and mature and all of that. You've got some great trees here too. We've loved it. And, a bit of a gratuitous beach. That, by the way, is Abel Tasman National Park. And we did a wonderful 18.5-mile hike in the Abel Tasman, and it was stupendous. So, this is also in Colorado. And this is to do with, death. We don't want to go there. But this is also to do with sustainability. And these are wildfires. And we drove past the same thing in New Zealand, actually. This is near Castle Hill on the South Island, Arthur's Pass area. And I know actually this week or last week, there's another wildfire incident on the North Island. Koha is and has always had a mind towards the environment and how software can be implemented in a way that is environmentally conscious. And we know that there are negative impacts on the environment caused by non-sustainable technologies. And that also should be part of our future vision of Koha. So I thought I'd throw those up just to make that point. Anyway, we want to keep Koha from its twilight years. We want to build for the next 25 years. So what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about to do that? Well, just a quick caveat about what this is not. This is definitely not a roadmap that we're going to show you. We don't have anywhere near all the answers. And that's why we're in a great community like we are, because we collectively have many of the answers. Also, we don't collectively yet have all the answers as a community, but we can find them out together. There's some of our ideas and thoughts. Jonathan and I have been, absent from the company for over a week whilst traveling around the South Island. But we would say that we've been working because we spent a lot of those 18 and a half miles in Abel Tasman actually talking about libraries.
So much so that we've actually booked separate seats on the way home so we don't have to talk anymore.
This is actually true. And obviously 25 years is a long time, and a lot can change in that time. We can't see so far into the future. We can think, we can see a little bit into the future as a group, but there will be other things that crop up. So it's really about stimulating some thought and stimulating some discussion into the next few days, hopefully, as well. And there is a roadmap session, which I'm going to advertise later as well. So what might happen in 25 years? Well, libraries will change. The libraries have changed already in 25 years. Libraries have changed in their entire history. And they will continue to change. So we need to be mindful of that. And we'll talk a bit more about that. Technology will change. AI may become intelligent. And we've got some thoughts on that. And new purposes for the LMS, ILS, will emerge. And Koha will need to address that. So, to take the libraries will change first. Now, in my preparation for this, I was doing some research around academic libraries and some really good thought-provoking stuff about what the future of academic libraries will look like. And so I thought I could visualize this, and I could get AI to help, right? Because that's what everyone does, right? So I put some of the data into an image generation model, and this is what it came up with. I don't even recognize a library in the background, let alone what that means in the foreground. So AI didn't help me with that particular vision. However, some of my research did. I'll come back to the academic libraries in a second. And we're going to both sort of talk about these changes in libraries. We think around public libraries. Some of these things are already happening, have already happened, but are moving further. So, for example, the Library of Things is real right now, but it's going further and further and further in terms of what that is trying to provide as services to users. And so when you're offering maker spaces or tools that the community can use, already where the user guides go in the library management system, what if there's liability sign-off needed around the use of a scary tool like a router or something like that? And how do we facilitate like a sign-off process within the management system?
Interesting enough, we've visited the library in Christchurch, which is a fantastic library with sewing machines and music studios. 2 years ago, we were in Helsinki. We visited Udi, which, again, fantastic facilities. Doesn't look so familiar as a library, but amazing spaces, absolutely packed with people, as when Udi was, and as was the library in Christchurch.
We're increasingly hearing about inquiry management as a requirement in libraries and as part of the system. Now, obviously, you can already integrate some tools for that. But how core is that becoming to the requirements of the library? Similarly, marketing. And again, there are integrations that can work really, really well with Koha. But again, is this calling for further implementation within the core product or not? We have just recently been exploring a process with the London libraries. It's a massive consortia. We have moved back from that because we don't think actually they're looking for Koha right now. But they had some really thought-provoking ideas around where they saw libraries. And in particular, this is public libraries, in particular around how the library is becoming increasingly the place for the authority to do business more generally, not just around library functions, but around delivery of tax information or handling customer service in the local authority area. And how does the system support any of that kind of activity? Analytics obviously is increasingly important. Around academic libraries, and by the way, public and academic is obviously not entirely covering all of the types of libraries that there are by any stretch of the imagination. But we saw a massive shift already in COVID, as everyone knows, from reliance on a lot of physical resources to a massive switch towards e-resources in libraries. And the role of librarians has moved along with that switch already, and looking further forward, there's a lot of talk about how libraries will have much greater role in supporting students to navigate the digital world, to understand how to implement new technologies like AI in their learning processes, and libraries will be hubs for that sort of digital education process, as well as a hub for the digital content itself. And they'll also increasingly, if they're not already, be social hubs, safe spaces within the university, community group organizations, all of those kind of functions will happen. So events and all of those sorts of things, bookings, all those sorts of things are very relevant to that future view. A lot about connection, collaboration, and innovation with new technology. So some interesting thoughts. Will they need an ILS or an LMS for all of this new stuff? I hope so. Well, ILS stands for Integrated Library System. It doesn't stand for catalog. LMS stands for Library Management System. It's about managing what the library does in a system. So it's very broad. It's great. It's all-encompassing. We can do what we like, is kind of what I'm saying there. So we're distinctly not, and I borrowed this from yesterday's, I think it was yesterday's YAML, yet another library catalogue. We don't want to be a YALC, obviously. And we're not. So technology will change. So that's libraries will change. Technology will change. I'm handing over to Jonathan.
Yeah, so I guess thinking about why do library systems become legacy. So interesting enough, we heard about one yesterday, Horizon 8, where suddenly development just stops or support just stops. That's a very obvious reason. Often architecture becomes out of date, and that can be the underlying architecture that the library management system sits on, or the components related to it. Company goes out of business or mergers. We've seen plenty of that in the library sector over the past 30 years. Great thing about Koha is that can't happen. If we go out of business, somebody else will happily carry on. Related really to the first point, technical debt as well. How do you handle technical debt? If you're not coping with the technical debt, the system slowly grinds to a halt. And I guess importantly, keeping up with the changing needs of users, and that's really what we're talking about here, is actually being able to think a few steps ahead as to where libraries are going and be able to accommodate that. Perl is dead, right? So this is not our opinion. This is the this was actually a quote from a tender that we lost a few months ago. And we won on every other aspect, technically fantastic, loved the presentations, everything else, but we think Perl is dead. So anyway.
So FUD is out there. We don't know for certain that Folio was successful with that tender, but we think they were, and EBSCO is definitely promoting FUD around not open source technology, but around fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but around Koha versus Folio. So just putting that out there.
Anyway, once we held back the angry mob of developers that we have in the team, Martin told me that Perl's number 9 in the TRBE index, which is interesting because it's actually made it's in a sort of renaissance. It had dropped down, but it's right back up there again. Lots of contemporary components, of course, already in Koha right now, and I think that gives a great framework for building, and we are doing that. We are doing that now. I mean, all the ERM module built on Vue.js, the revised vendors module in 2505, that's Vue.js. So from where we're standing, there's no sign of the architecture becoming obsolete. And I think also the platform that Koha sits on still runs huge parts of the whole internet right now, and no sign of that changing, I don't think. Could we do more modernization, housekeeping underneath? Well, we do, but could we do more? And then one thought we had on our, probably about mile 17 on our hike, maybe AI is going to get good enough that when Perl is obsolete in 25 years' time or more, AI maybe is going to rewrite this stuff. Mobile first, I think, is important. So there are parts of the world where 80+% of people use mobile devices over desktop devices. In the UK, it's much, much smaller than that, and I'm sure it'll be different in your own regions. But what it does mean is that mobile and tablets are very important. So what are we doing to support that? At the minute, there isn't a mobile app for Koha. Staff interface isn't fully responsive at the moment, which probably needs addressing. And we know from the public libraries that we speak to in particular that a lot of their staff are no longer using desktop computers. They're walking around the libraries with their tablets and engaging with the public with the tablets in front of them. So we need them to be able to use these devices. And also, what about the technology that's coming? Smartwatches, rings, eyewear, cyber implants, heaven forbid. I think that's a call coming in. Hang on. Putting the intelligence in AI. So again, Andrew mentioned a tender we were involved in recently, and these were some of the things that were asked for in that tender. So it gives you a flavour of what people, perhaps the expectations of people are right now. And we had to give a response to these ideas about AI, and that was a struggle because we don't have immediate responses today to these things. So AI-powered search and recommendation engines, automated metadata enhancement, I think that's an obvious one. Chatbots to answer common library queries. What time is the library open? AI to improve accessibility in the site, content moderation, and interestingly one, fraud detection for people registering for the library. And I think there is tension between open source and open data and AI right now. And we did have a recent customer day and an online discussion where we focused on AI. And the reason we did that was not to share our thoughts, it was more to gather thoughts from the libraries that we work with. And there is definitely concerns within the library community about AI and how libraries fit into AI. And largely the feedback we got was not enthusiastic and positive and wanting to bound into this. It was more fear about what's what's coming. And interestingly enough, when we sort of delved into it a bit further, the biggest fear really is about the tech companies behind this stuff. That's really at the heart of people's fears. They're not so frightened about the concept of AI and using it, but it's the tech companies behind it. But we can't ignore it, and we know that within the Koha community right now there are some initiatives to experiment with AI, and I think that's great.
And just to add, I think, to some of their hesitance, just looping back to the question of sustainability, and we know that AI is hugely costly at the moment in its implementation to the environment, and we need to not then rush headlong into contributing to that because of the background of where Koha comes from and what its goals are. And then also just thinking of this morning's presentation, we were in Paris in the spring. There's a song in there somewhere. At the Open Source Founders Summit, and there was some really interesting discussion about the impact of AI and other big tech encroachments across the world on digital sovereignty. So the idea of your technology no longer being owned or being managed entirely within your own sovereign realm. And that's an important concept also to think about when looking at AI technology in a Koha context. So we've talked about how libraries are going to change. We've talked a bit about how technology is going to change and the direction of travel perhaps that we need to explore around AI. But what is already happening to add new stuff to the ILS LMS, and what could also happen? What can we discuss as things that we could add or do to change what the function of the ILS is? Obviously, we're talking about Koha, and I particularly love the Koha logo and the genesis of the Koha logo in the fern unfurling frond. And it's another opportunity to gratuitously show that photo because I love it so much. But what we're talking about here are these lovely unfurling fronds in the center of a tree fern in this case. While we're talking about tree ferns, this is a dead one. Okay, so this is not what the future of Koha is. But more, and I did learn these words, Feki, Ponga, Mamaku, are three of the different varieties in this beautiful land that we're in. And the name for the unfurling frond is the koru, and that represents new life, regeneration, and hope for the future. And I kind of like to think of each of these new unfurling koru as a new functionality within Koha. We have this beautiful, I'm going to say it's a ponga, this one, it probably isn't, but anyway, we are seeing already the new unfurling technology that's happening. So here are some examples.
Yeah, so ERM, I think, is going to become more and more important as the years go forward, particularly as electronic becomes more important. So we already have an ERM module now. There's still much to do in it. So if you go into Bugzilla and search under ERM, you'll see a lot of bugs, and there's some great functionality in there that's we'd love to do, and not only love to do, we need to do. Widgeted dashboards. So you may or may not have seen this. I think this is coming in 2511.
Yep, it's landed.
First widgeted dashboard inside of Koha, where you have these blocks on the home page of ERM, and you can drag the blocks around. You can change what's in the blocks. This, I think, is very important. It's great now, but I think it's very important going forward because we can have widgeted dashboards now with the Vue.js framework everywhere, on the cataloging homepage, reports homepage, everywhere. So there's still much to do with ERM. One of the big problems is with the proprietary vendors, they hold the keys of the content. And I think that's a big problem for us as a community. But I think there are opportunities around open access journals and the searching and sort of harvesting of open access. And I think that's something certainly something we've talked about a lot internally as an organisation. It's something we'd like to explore further, I think, and I think it's probably something we need to explore further in the coming years.
ILL, anyone who's interested in this space knows that there's been a lot of work done in the last few releases, and there's a lot more to do. And one of the drivers behind this is that ILL is becoming increasingly important for many libraries as budgets shrink and access to acquisitions, particularly, or the capacity to have big acquisition budgets changes. So ILL becomes important, and interlending platforms are increasingly dominating this space. But Koha is becoming that too. So Koha is building the functionality to be a real interlending platform for libraries, and providing opportunities to talk directly to other, not just other Koha systems on in an interlending capacity, but other library systems that support the ISO 18626 standard for interlending. Pedro has been working hard on the automation of lending, so that's borrowing in, bringing in for you resources from multiple providers. And there's some great videos out there of how that functionality works, and all of it's landed now in 25, or landing in 2511. It's already landed in part in previous releases. And he's working now on the supply side part of ILL, and these are already screenshots of his work to date, and we're working hard with other partners in Bywater and also the Library of Finland on this development to implement the ability for you to manage the whole of the interlending process within Koha, that which you borrow in and that which you supply out, and also to do that in an interconnected way with other library systems. Bookings and leading to events. We were talking what's going to change about libraries, and more capacity to have events, do different social things within the library. So booking of spaces will be important, already is important. Booking of resources is important. The future bookings functionality continues to develop at pace. Paul Derscheid of LMS Cloud has done some great work that we're sort of getting close to landing in Maine in the next wee while. It won't quite squeak in for 2511, but will be there definitely for 2605. And that puts the current bookings functionality behind a Vue.js framework, which enables future enhancements. And there's a whole load of stuff that's coming, already partly done, that's coming on the back of Paul's work. Hourly bookings, for example, which is very important for room bookings and some of the more valuable resource bookings that people want to use. And part of this has led us to proposing, and I had a discussion about this at the Dach Koha that I attend, to add a new type of location within Koha to enable properly for a room to be a room, because a room ain't a bibliographic record. Let's face it. But a room at the moment is a bibliographic record in Koha if you want to book it. So have a room as a room, or a location as a location. It's a physical thing. And then enable what you do with that in all sorts of applications within the software. That's our vision, and that's what we're going to work on to help with bookings and to help with events and things like that going forward. And that doesn't have to be do everything in Koha. It paves the way for better integration with other platforms as well, because they want to talk to Koha on that basis actually already. There is also an already starting, going to be worked on in the next 12 to 24 months project around modernizing the OPAC. Now, we know that VuFind, and we heard from Craig about how VuFind works really well for them as a discovery layer, and we also implement Aspen alongside Koha as a discovery layer for many of our larger libraries. But there are many that we don't, because they don't want to have that. The complexity is too great for them. They don't need it. They need a Koha OPAC. So they need the Koha OPAC to modernize, to move with, what the expectations are of the future world, 25 years' time, remember. And so LMS Cloud started a proposal in Marseille this year, and I think they're slating sort of starting work on that in the next 12 months. So I think that's a really interesting project to get involved in if you're interested in this particular part of Koha's development. And then there are more stuffs that we could add. That's not good English. But it's plural because there's so much of it. So do we want to think about inquiry management within Koha? Do we want to do workflow management within Koha? Digital collection management. We had a great idea about that from Mark yesterday, I think it was, already pushing down that road. And I've mentioned event management a couple of times. And this future of the academic libraries, we talked about the role of the librarian and learning and supporting students more proactively, and not it being so much about physical resource management and pointing people at the right book. It's not about that. I'm simplifying, I know. But learning platform, but then, there's big learning platforms out there that do all this stuff. So the question of, and this brings us to the things to wrestle with, and the roadmap workshop advert, Sunday morning 9:15. If you're interested in all this stuff, be there. There are things to wrestle with. So will Mark 21 ever die questions? Or should it ever die? Obviously, we've just heard a presentation about that, and that was a presentation which ended in a load of questions. The question of whether separate software implementation, VuFind alongside DSpace, alongside Koha, works brilliantly. So why try to build some of that into Koha? The question of whether you add functionality as new modules or whether you add it in a plugin-oriented sort of a way. So it's optional and light touch. And that sort of brings towards the sustainability question. Koha is light. It's easy to implement. It's sustainable. If you make it too monolithic and big and too functional, you're potentially making it heavier weight and less sustainable and less implementable. So there's stuff to talk about on Sunday. And another context, and the next presentation after lunch, maybe, is about the Koha Foundation. And this is an important part of our journey for the next 25 years, I believe, is to help the community through the foundation to find its way through some of these questions, and to work on how that influences the direction and the way we work together as a community. But more on that later. What's most important is that this is another beautiful picture of a wonderful, and I'm going to call it a Koha, because for me, this beautiful plant is a gift to us. And I'll say from my heritage from Mother Nature, to enjoy and to watch regenerate every year. Or in New Zealand, they don't die back. I mean, they just keep regenerating, going and going. When we plant them at home, they sort of go all sad and miserable in the winter. Yeah, it's a lovely picture and a lovely thought. So that's Koha as a Koha. That was our presentation on building for the next 25 years. Thank you very much for listening.